13, May 13th work session. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, all. So this evening, why are we here? Kind of bringing back what we talked about May 7th last year as a refresher. And basically, it's to reaffirm your commitment to the staffing model that was put together over the last year. The biggest thing, one of the biggest things I want to pass along to the City Council is that the reason I'm ensuring this is because there is a cost to the Relief Association to dissolve. And what that cost ensues is basically using the city attorney to help with their dissolution. And so before we venture down that road, I want to make sure that we have a commitment from the council to continue to go down this path. So as a refresher, on 12/23, the council approved resolution 60-2024, which is the dissolution of the Relief Association, and resolution 60-2024 or 61-2024 to participate in the police fire para of our part-time firefighters. So basically what that's doing is, yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you have a ballpark of what the cost is to dissolve the relief? There's like a ballpark figure of what that would take?
It depends upon, I know the city attorney, I believe, is getting the city attorney's rate that the city provides.
Right.
I'm not really sure exactly what that overall cost is, but that comes out of
Their budget.
their budget, correct.
Okay. Sorry.
But it's not gonna be like $20,000 or nothing.
No, when, it's basically just to make sure that there's a process in their following, making sure that they notify creditors, they don't have any creditors, but they just need to like post that in the local, the press that we utilize, some of those things. So there shouldn't be a huge cost.
Okay.
But the attorney usually kind of guides that just to make sure that that process is followed.
$100, Amy?
Give or take.
Give or take, exactly.
Thank you.
Yep. And then, so on 3/27, the Relief Association, from the minutes that I received, unanimously voted to dissolve the Relief Association as of September 30th of this year, 2025, which would then leave the police fire para paid on, or duty crew model with full-time staffing to start roughly about October 1st. So with that, what's the problem that we have here in the city of Dayton? And it's not specific to the city of Dayton. It's everywhere, and I'll show the comparisons as we go through the slides here, but it's more demands of people's times. Population change, obviously, from a smaller rural community to more of an urban setting that we have today. And then there's a decline in sense of civic responsibility, or meaning participation in the ability to volunteer their time, if you will. So the solution, present a response model that ensures a reliable emergency response, supports the city's continued growth, while providing a more predictable work-life balance, or work-life fit, as one of my firefighters told me today. Fit is more of the millennial generation, but do they have time for it to fit into their schedule, if you will? Our current staffing model is that you see up on the screen. The entire department, roughly 26 firefighters today, is paged out for all calls 24 hours a day, 365 days per year. The proposed staffing model would be staffed here at Station 2. Would be from 7 in the morning until 10 p.m. at night, Monday through Friday, with a minimum staffing of 2 firefighters. Station 2 would be staffed from 9 to 7 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, with a minimum of 2 firefighters. And then between 10 and 07, 7 days a week, there's no staffing at the station. What's the reason for that? Primarily, 78% of our call volume is between 7 in the morning and 10 p.m. at night. So therefore, we want to make sure that we're able to meet the commitments when somebody calls 911.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
During that 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., what's our average calls per day right now?
Average calls per
Because
day.
none of the slides had any time stamped information on it, or when those calls are coming out. So just while we're talking about it, that
Yep.
being the staffing, if 78% come out between 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., what's the average number of calls per day?
We've got, I can give you counts per week and counts per month. And
That'll give an average though.
Yeah. We take, slide down here. That's the last 7 days. Let's see.
Sorry for derailing the conversation.
Use my calculator really quick. That's right. That's not going to give me that right.
Sorry, it's never easy when everybody's staring at you too.
Oh, no,
so
that's fine.
I apologize for that.
Take your time, we got all night.
It's like when they ask you to do something in
It's not
Excel,
done
and
yet,
you're
it
like, I
won't get
swear I
done.
know what I'm doing,
It's
but
nice out.
Huh?
It's nice out.
It's hotter than shit out there.
Oh, it's beautiful.
it's beautiful if you're not doing any work. If you're just sitting and relaxing. So
That's
it's
what I'm
beautiful,
doing.
Paul.
So I have incident counts per hour of the day.
Is it something that needs to be done tonight, or can we get back to you on that maybe? Just trying to figure out what timing and, I mean, I think it's important information to just
Yeah, no, I just,
2.4.
About 2.4. Okay.
Two-
About 2.4 calls per day roughly.
There you go.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
During that 7 a.m. to 10
Doesn't
p.m.
seem like much.
And is that
Although
averaged
if you
over
go-
what time period? Because that matters as well too. Is this over this year? Is this over 2024, 2025? Like what are, it matters how big the sample set is.
I mean,
But
if
at
you multiply
2.4
by,
a day
that's
times
700,
a year,
800 calls.
That's more than the total volume for the year.
Right.
So that can't be.
No, we're about about 606 calls for the year. We're at this currently on this piece of paper. We're sitting at 242 calls for this year. So if you take 242 divided by whatever, but incident by call. I mean, I've got by time. I can get you the by day or by hour and by day if you'd like in that capacity.
But that's 2025, correct? For up to
It would
date
be
from today.
through, January through 2025. I can do some other filtering on here as well.
Okay.
To go back. The problem that we have with 2024 is we have two different RMS models.
Yes.
And so we had ER from January till roughly the end of September, and then we started with the new one at the beginning of October. So it causes a little bit of issues in that capacity.
Thank you.
So why does the model work? Provides that predictable level of staffing and response, improve response. We're seeing roughly, as of today, showing about roughly an average of 8 minutes and 38 seconds for turnout, but some of that does include Kevin and I's time while we're here. Supports reduced burnout, supports recruitment and retention, supports work-life balance, work-life fit. It's fiscally responsible. It's reutilizing the dollars that have already been given to the organization. So instead of having, right now we're getting about 4.8 people to a call. If we only need 2, then I'm not paying people that are not necessarily needed. Now granted, that 4.8 is across all call types. And then it's safer community overall. So the demographics, roughly about $1 million. Right, last year we have calls for service was 606. Fire calls were 167, and medical are 438. So recently we've kind of switched, and we're pretty comparable to other agencies. We're more of a 30%, 70% medical, 30% fire. Currently we have 26 paid on call firefighters, 2 fire stations, a full-time fire chief and assistant chief. Police respond to all calls along with us, and like I said, we have roughly about 4.8.
Chief?
Yes.
It's not directly related, but why compared to these other cities, other than Rogers, which has a huge amount of commercial, is our per capita budget so high? What drives that?
Their budget or our?
Ours.
Hours.
Well, a lot of it has to do with, the paid-on-call model is very expensive from the capacity of when I need to bring firefighters on. So, for instance, for firefighter 1, firefighter 2, EMT, all that, those hours, the cost of the class for them to attend, along with having to outfit each firefighter. So I think I said last year roughly per firefighter, it's about $17,000. And that's just get them equipped and trained in that capacity. Outside of that, a lot of it is $40,000 of his training, $60,000 we put in for maintenance. Just engine 21 is out right now with an $8,000 or $9,000 radiator replacement. And anything as it relates to the fire service seems to be about 10 times more expensive when you say that you need it for the fire
Yeah,
department.
I've noticed that. I guess what I'm getting at here is the numbers you gave us. For example, St. Michael, we're at
Yeah.
$90 per person, or per person. St. Michael's at 30. Champlin's at 43. Elk River's at 70. Maple Grove's at 70. Now, Maple Grove, you can probably toss out because of the
Sure.
size. Rogers is comparable to us, but again, I think, Rogers has a massive amount of commercial compared to us. So, and I don't think it's paid on call, because, again, St. Michael has slightly more than us. So I'm just wondering what drives that.
Sometimes it depends too on what they're paying for too. I don't know exactly if they're paying everyone to go to their calls. A lot of or not their calls, to like training, that comes into play as well. Some places will pay for the class and not pay them to go to class. So that could come into play there. It's, it's all over the place, like you said.
Okay.
Questions, I guess, on these. When you look at the differences that we put up here, most, if not all, so Rogers, Anoka Champlin, Maple Grove, like I said, you can kick out, but throw it in there as an example. Elk River, St. Michael, completely different. Osseo, a little bit different, but some of our more comparisons, all of them are running at least 4 or 5 full-time people, along with their paid-on-call model. So that obviously those 4 or 5 extra people throughout the day assist them with responding to calls. And right now, it's just Kevin.
I have a clarifying question.
Yes.
So the cities that you have here, their full-time personnel are like a fire chief, a deputy chief of training. There's most of these are assistant chief, full-time fire marshal. The positions that we're talking about today for the city of Dayton are not chief positions. They're not fire marshal positions. They are strictly just firefighters, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
So what do they do when they're not fighting fires?
So there's many things that we can do. We need to do pre-plans for our, regardless if it's residential or commercial. We can do some community inspections as it relates to community development. So, some of those things, Golden Valley is a model for that as well. We need to start our inspection program for the fire inspections part of the house. We haven't been able to get out and do that. We also
Would they
have
be qualified for that?
what's that?
Would they be qualified to do that?
Sure. And there's a lot of our firefighters that are get fire inspector one that can do that. And they're basic inspections at the end of the day. They're not plan reviews, if you will, like reading water calculations for sprinkler systems and such. That would be more of the fire marshal's position.
So it would be strictly just an inspector, not a marshal.
Correct. Yep.
And the difference would be experience, training.
Correct.
Those.
Yep.
They'd also be working with creating a community risk reduction plan with that, implementing that plan, maintenance, facility maintenance, truck maintenance.
So they would then need to be an officer, correct? Because per Care Resource Connections contract, doesn't your community risk reduction person have to be an officer or a chief?
Yeah, that's why everything goes to Heather.
So would that be then, these would be officer positions during the day, or these would be strictly firefighters?
They're gonna be firefighters, they're gonna probably be leaders in the future because they're gonna be full-time, so that continuity between full-time and part-time.
Right, but they would not be able to be the risk reduction
That was always
point of
coming.
contact.
Everyone really participates in that as a risk reduction because when they are not out on a call, they make when Kevin and I are not on a call, they make the referral to us, and basically our role is then to take a look at the call and then pass it on. So it's really a pass on. Any other questions as it relates to kind of our regional comparisons?
The call volume, which I think is where we should be the same, but
Yep, we're gonna get there.
I'm looking at, again, Rogers is comparable to us. And I think that's got us, star by it simply because of all the commercial. St. Michael, Milka Champlin, Elk River, even Maple Grove, call volume per population is ours is twice. My understanding is that's because we take all calls, and they don't.
There's some of that, but
Well, looks like there's a lot of that.
there's not though, and I'll get into that here in a minute.
Okay.
So statistics, projected incident call year volume, roughly 672 as the date of that. Let me scroll down on my computer, see if we are roughly probably about the same, which I think we are. It's probably within a couple. That's 11.26 for right now, I think. Our statistics say more like 10 point something, so that's come down a little bit. Again, to help everyone understand how this works, is right now we're scheduled at 669 calls. So basically what it's taking us historically up to this point, and then it's forecasting the same exact data that we had last year moving forward. So when that changes, that impacts the overall number. So I made a prediction at the end of last year saying that we'll hit about 666. Right now, I think this will probably stay pretty static. January and February, we had a pretty erroneous months, they're record months. That wasn't just here, that was for law enforcement, that was also other agencies surrounding us as well. So January and February, a lot of sick calls, if you will. I mean, calls to 911 itself. It's hard to see on here, but these are North Memorial statistics. Mayor, to your point, you want to reduce calls.
I would think everybody would want to use calls.
My question to you is, what call types would you like to reduce, and why would you want to reduce those call types?
Because I believe other agencies. I think a lot of these calls, at least I'm seeing, I'm not sure our guys do much with them.
Okay.
So they show up to a call and they twiddle their thumbs. What's that do for morale? We have another problem here that showed up in your stats.
Okay.
Our response to these calls, you're showing 5 for Dayton, well below every other city.
Mhm.
Which means, even on a, responses for population is way down. So there's something going on that doesn't give them the drive to get in the car. I know that years back, when my dad was on the department, they would drop everything they were doing and go when that beeper went off. And I suspect that's not happening. At least in Dayton, I've seen that looks like it's not happening to the rate it is with these other cities. And again, these other cities, they don't have our call volume, which tells me they're not going to a lot of these calls also.
So do you have a specific call type that you'd like to reduce?
Not necessarily, I guess I'd have to look at it and see what they're saying, what they're doing.
Sure.
To me, I would think that fire wouldn't go to the fall. I've fallen and I can't get up.
Well, I'll push back on you. We should be going to fall calls and we should be going to lift assist calls. But that's where the value of Care Resource Connections comes in, because every one of those calls should be referred back. Because a lot of those are other things, not just, hey, I fell and I can't get up. It's why did you fall, what happened? So my question would be, I guess because Amy's here, can I ask?
Yeah.
Referrals from Dayton so far this year? Because I'm looking at 2025 data, was what you gave us, right? And how many, do you know the number of referrals that we've pushed to you guys this year so far?
Yeah, so far this year we have four open cases.
4,
Yep,
okay.
We've closed, let's see, we've also closed some other cases as well. But we've had 13 closed and 4, so it should be 17 altogether.
So we've referred every fall and every lift assist to Care Resources?
For the most part.
No.
The crews have been really good and been sending them forward to us.
We're not referring every single fall because there's not a need to refer every single fall.
So the firefighters are deciding when we're referring and when we're not, right?
Correct.
And we went through training to do that, right?
Yep, and if they say yes, we're open and willing to accept help.
Then it comes to you.
Yep, and
Okay.
some people will say no, and they go again, that's kind of where.
That repeat?
Yep, where they come in.
Do you have a projection of how many, call reduction? As far as, what Care Resources has reduced from our call line?
Since the beginning of 2024, or since the whole time we've been here, we're rated around, that 30%.
Okay.
Of those repeat.
Of the repeat calls,
Of
yeah.
those repeat falls.
I guess what I'm getting at, and it's kind of a roundabout sort of a way, I think we have a lot of resources here that I don't know how do I say this? I hope and I would like to see us take full advantage of all of the resources that we have. So,
The problem is, and it's same with our embedded social worker, they have to be willing to take the help. If they're not willing, the
Yeah.
embedded
there's nothing you
social-
can do.
there's nothing we can do.
I hear you, but when asking what role Care Resources had, a number of people I asked about it didn't know anything about the program. And they were under the impression that they weren't referring people, that was just Kevin who was referring people. So I think that there's a missing link in there of training. I don't know what it is, but I will just come out and say that I don't know that we've taken full advantage of that resource. And it may partly, to your point, be that people have to be willing to accept help, but you don't know the help is there unless it's offered to you. So I could see that as being a way to reduce call volume. I also wonder, some of these calls, and I guess I'm speaking from experience of secondhand, being married to a firefighter, we don't make patient contact. Or we gave vitals and waited for the ambulance to come. So I'm wondering if there was a way we can use our resources and look at those calls and say, because unfortunately what happens, and to your point, not getting people to get in the car and drive there, a lot of it is, oh, this came out as this again. Well, last time we stood there, we gave vitals, or they refused to let us give vitals, and we paid 3-4 firefighters to stand there. And I'm not saying that they're not doing their job, and I'm not saying that's not value there.
I guess I'm just saying that it looks to me like there's
There's
either an incentive problem or there's a problem in Dayton.
I don't think it's just Dayton.
It's not just Dayton. The part of the problem is that, and you have different demographics from each of those other departments, if I go back on these. Most of holistically, our entire organization, with the exception of probably Travis, Kevin, Jeff Westendorf,
Kirk and Sharon.
So 5 of the 26 have tenure or have been here for some period of time. The rest of them have been here for a maximum of 3 years or less. So you have a different generation of firefighters coming in, and I completely see what you're seeing there, is because that's my same question. And talking to other people, and if you look at kind of going back to Anoka Champlin, and talking to Anoka Champlin, Chief Mazzucati, they're getting 5 to 10 firefighters. The problem is they don't have the tenured firefighters that used to understand that, hey, it's important to go to these calls, kind of motivate them to that capacity. So you have a new generation of folks coming into the fire service that don't have anyone there to kind of nudge them, if you will.
Well, I mean, I'm also looking at simple call volume. St. Michael's twice our size, and they have slightly less calls. I think a lot of these communities aren't going to all calls.
Well, we'll talk about this. So
Okay,
these are the calls right here that we respond to. Difficult to see. Hopefully you can see it on your, this is the numbers for this year. I can't do it myself. So but the idea is that these are the different call types. The other thing that I want to, well, I'll get to that. When we get these that come in, the problem that we have, and it gets to this point here, this is only a small segment. In your packet, you have more.
I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand
Yep.
what that was saying.
So this is the biggest reason why it's important to go out to all these calls that you may not believe that we need to go to. One in pain. So that's one here says pain on the left. Is if you look at the left-hand side where it says pain, insulin problem, dizzy, faint, lift assist, so forth.
Yeah.
That's what the dispatcher sent out to us. If you look at the stuff on the right, it's possibly having a panic attack. This is what that's just one example. If you look at January 31st, comes in as an insulin problem for a 70-year-old female. That ended up being a fall. You look at the one below it that comes in as dizzy and faint, and that's how it gets dispatched, and it's an electrocution.
Well, he got shot. Yes.
You talk about lift assist, fall with injury, dizzy, faint, hysterectomy with side pain.
What value are we bringing to hysterectomy with side pain? Taking vitals and waiting for transport? I guess I'm just wondering, what value is the fire department specifically bringing to that call?
We are providing,
Or panic attack? What are we providing?
well, I mean.
A friendly face, yes.
Yep, friendly face. We are also having that contact because, we currently are waiting, or we will be waiting, roughly about 15 to 16 minutes for each time North responds. The one thing that I haven't brought up yet, and I'll bring it up now, is the truck that's in Rogers is going to be no longer in
Yep.
August.
Yep.
So that truck will be done in August, and so roughly about 200-ish of our calls, that's what service we were able to utilize that Rogers truck. Now you're going to have the truck responding potentially from Maple Grove Station 4. If they happen to be at the Maple Grove Clinic, we can or the hospital, we can get them dispatched from there. But the idea is that we're not going to have that resource. It's going to be a delayed response. So some of these that come across as...
But with all due respect, Chief, other than somebody showing up, what are we adding? What value are we at? Other than somebody showed up and you're here, and you're staring me in the face, and I know that I'm not alone, which I'm not trying to discredit, but what above and beyond that are we doing by being there?
We have the ability to provide, if it's an allergic reaction, we can give epinephrine. If it's...
I'm talking about your specific examples. I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. The panic attack and the hysterectomy that you have here as your examples.
Yep.
What are we doing? We got on scene.
We're going to take their vitals. We're going to provide, if they need oxygen, we're going to provide that to them. It's that, hey, what else is going on? Because my point is just because it came in as that, it's not necessarily what we're arriving to.
Oh, more times than not.
More
I would
times
agree
than
with
not.
you. But my question to Paul then is, your officers are EMR trained?
First responder.
Okay.
So they're already there, right?
They're already there. Most of the time, if you're in your car already, you're going to beat fire most of the time, unless you're on another call. So if they are EMR trained, they can take vitals, correct? If they needed to?
Most of them, I think, have the finger. Do we have the...
I don't know if they pulse
do they have the
oximeters.
pulse ox? No.
But you could. If you got on a scene,
We
just-
could, but the problem is once we make patient contact,
you can't
we
leave
can't
until.
leave
Right.
until
So,
North gets...
yeah, if we were to rely more on you, that would impact you would add hours.
Correct.
Or
I
officers.
understand that.
Correct.
I just kind of what I'm getting at is, are you're EMR trained, you could also provide the same service in this specific, in this example, you could provide the same service that fire would provide.
North is.
They could not take vitals?
EMR is not the same as EMT.
No,
I
we.
apologize, ma'am.
No, we're not all of our fire is EMT, and I don't believe they should be EMT, but we can get to that later. But
3/4 of the department's EMT.
Am I allowed to join in on this?
please
Go
do.
ahead, you specifically.
So I think you're downplaying kind of what Chief is trying to get to. So the point he's trying to elicit is that what comes out from Huntington County from the tower as one in pain is not as it always appears.
It's
So-
most never, but it.
Correct, and then Chief will get to some of the data that, about calls that are transported in or transferred in for pre-arrival.
Yep.
And that's a very small subset of the overall medical population or medical calls for the city of Dayton. But to say that an officer on scene should take out a pulse ox and start providing, vitals when they should have a global approach and a global view to what's going on scene outside of, maybe that 49-year-old that's having a panic attack, something outside of that stomachache precipitated that. So you take that officer who is potentially responding by himself, and you dedicate him to this scene, and he's now committed to the scene, and he's committed to this patient, losing his more broader range. So it's not, yes, an EMR can take a blood pressure and put on a pulse ox. I think you are misrepresenting the skill set that the EMTs have comparatively to an EMR.
No, I agree with you. They are wildly different things, but we don't operate at an EMT level. We don't have an ambulance service.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
we give insulin. No.
We
give epi. There's like 17 different things that we are, I'm going to bite my tongue and not say what I want to say. But those are the things that we use our EMT training for. If you ask a lot of the firefighters, they say, I don't know what I do different than what you do. You're EMR, I'm EMT. We don't do EMT level services. So that's what I'm trying to say is that we're trained to an EMT, but we don't exercise those above and beyond the couple things that we now have variances to do. So to say they're showing up EMT certified and they're giving EMT level is not true for the city of Dayton.
Define what an EMT is.
We don't do the same things that a paramedic does. We don't do the same things that a rig would do. We don't do IVs. We do insulin, and you have to draw it up, and the guys are, that's a whole other thing. We do insulin, we do epi, they do...
Well, aside from that, they don't get the experience.
No.
I mean,
Absolutely not.
that's been my problem with the CMT thing from day one. If I need something and an EMT firefighter shows up versus this guy, I'll take this guy.
Yeah, don't touch me.
I'd take one of them before I'd take one of me.
That may
to
be.
let you know.
At
Yeah.
this time, yes, but I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't know that because there's a possibility that something comes out wrong from dispatch, does that say that it doesn't change and you can't say page fire out and we have a second page?
We just lost 4 minutes.
We're already 8 minutes out. If it's a heart call, we're 8 minutes out anyway.
No, you're 12 minutes out.
Correct. I hear you. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that the 2 calls per day that we average, I guess, warrants this step, is kind of what I guess I'm getting.
But you can't take the 2.4 days calls per day that you average to pay for firefighters because you pay, say, $200,000 a year for a cop. We maybe average 2.5 calls a day. But some days we average 15 to 20, some days we average 1 to 2.
Correct, but you add value during the day, different than what a full-time fire would add.
But they can do their code enforcements. The firefighters can do the code enforcement stuff, the fire stuff. Where we're not, we're just doing, we're public safety. We do the traffic enforcement. We do take all calls for service that come in. The biggest thing is once we get on scene and we make patient contact, if we get a domestic, if we get an assault, if we get anything like that, we can't be.
Right, you can't abandon your patient.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we get that.
And to your comment about, Mr. Mayor, your comment about us showing up and having a face and Councilmember Henderson, I mean, it's the level of service that you want to give your community. If you get a warm body that shows up when you're
Yeah, except-
in that pain
Yep.
and in that, and the residents are paying for it with their taxes, so.
Well,
that-
except we have responses at 4, 5. They don't want to respond to calls. So, I mean, that's part of it. All this stuff kind of comes together, I think, and for our fire department's having issues, so.
Yeah, and it's not just this fire department, though.
No.
That's the reality.
It's statewide.
Zach was
Maybe,
just at a
but that's not
conference.
what I'm seeing from call responses, so.
Well, again, we've explained some of that already as it relates to some of that stuff. But the reality is, as Chief Inga said, what's the level of service you want to provide to the community at the end of the day? There is a difference between EMR and EMT. You and a guy can disagree to disagree, and that's fine.
I agree with you, there's a difference. I don't see us acting on the difference, is my point.
Well, the idea is that we have the ability to fix the problem as much as we can before they get here. The success rate for somebody that we have the ability to do variances with, or alt variances, now granted, I've grandfathered the, I don't know, how many do we have that are
Then we have
EMR?
5 EMRs left.
5 EMRs that have been here, which is fine. They have the ability and they've been trained at the EMT level. We brought Dr. Tangy in to provide training to them. He's come in here, we've done several things as far as training goes as it relates to that. Back to the mayor's point of right now, currently, Station 1, for example, because of its location, does not have an opportunity to serve the community. So they don't get those opportunities to go out. Yes, they're paged out, they get on the truck, and unfortunately for them, often they're canceled because of the geographic area where the calls are. So that's very demoralizing in that capacity. With this system, all the firefighters are going to have the opportunity to serve the community from a duty crew perspective. So
Right now, to do calls that would go to that would be, say, primarily a Station 2 issue. Does call 1 people get the call?
yes, the whole department.
So they
Site
can.
gets it.
They
can
still,
show up.
yep, they still come. We don't have the ability to just segregate.
Okay.
We could to reduce calls, but then Station 1 would probably be called 10% of the time, maybe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
in that, just based on geographic location. This we kind of hit on, 66 of the 85, we've had to make some changes to the call type, obviously. And I'll let Kevin talk on this, but before he jumps in on where he came to this, the biggest thing that the firefighters, to your point, Mayor, is that we have roughly 5 firefighters. It doesn't matter if it's a medical call or it's a fire call. We have roughly the same amount of participation on actual structure fires. So to me, my biggest soapbox since I've been here is work-life balance, because I've lived it 30 years on this side. I'm trying to make sure that they do have work-life balance or work-life fit, whatever you want to say, so that they have the ability, and with this schedule and with the assistance of the full-time staff, it brings down their level of participation, if you will. Right now, we started off the year roughly with, from January through June, they have to make 78 calls. That's 10 calls per month, plus roughly about, we'll say, 6 to 8 hours of training, and then our all calls. So we're trying to hit that roughly that 20 hours per month. If I look at what Otsego is trying to provide, it's significantly more than that. And then the unknown, the predictability is often hard on some people because they feel like they should be at the fire call, but then they also feel that they need to be participating with activities with their family. So with the duty crew model, this isn't something that Gary just dreamed up on his own. It's been in the fire service. It's a stepping stone. You have 3 models, basically. You have the ability to be paid on call like we are today, move to a duty crew model, hybrid model, and then ultimately probably to a full-time model with still paid on call staffing. And that's the Otsego model, if you've seen that, and what they're moving towards, 9 full-time and then augmented with part-time paid on call firefighters. Plymouth currently has that, and then there's some organizations that are strictly full-time. The schedule that you see in front of you, this is duty crew with no additional full-time staffing. So 5-hour duty shifts in 4 weeks. Basically what that's gonna do, if we just had no full-time to help with deferring the call volume during the daytime with the other full-time staff, meaning Kevin and I, their requirement to participate in a month is gonna go from 20 to roughly 40 plus. They're not interested in that. They wanna truly operate on the capacity of, they wanna participate in calls when they can. And often, the numbers that we would need over time, as the call volume continues to increase, just because we cut a certain call type isn't necessarily going to fix that. As we continue to get the apartment complexes and the townhouses that were recently approved, along with, currently we have a bunch of empty commercial buildings. As those become occupied, our daytime residency, if you will, increases dramatically. So then we have call responses to those geographic locations where we might not have it at night. And right now, like I said, 78% of our call volume is between that 7 in the morning and 10 at night. So the idea is to maintain 20-ish hours a month participation. They don't have to go to, we're planning on roughly 4 all calls per month, thereabouts, per firefighter. We anticipate there'll be about 180-ish all calls throughout the year. Again, that's just based on current statistics. We could have something that's far greater than that, depending upon weather or, other extenuating circumstances. But I'll let Kevin talk about the next couple of slides as it relates to the schedule.
Before you jump past that, when you're talking about assigning these 5-hour shifts, are people on site or are they just being called in at that point?
Councilman Fischel, yes, they're physically here at the station. So we're able to take that 8-minute response time, or the median. Roughly people have the ability to live up to 10 minutes away currently. So if they're responding during the daytime, it could take them 10 minutes. Primarily, most of the people from Station 1 is the area that live about 10 minutes away typically. Most of them are in Otsego or Rogers. We have about 2 or 3.
Can I, for response times, just to let you know, we don't know, it's hard to get the statistics from Hennepin County, but we don't know how long some of these calls sit in queue before we're even dispatched to them. Some can sit, I think there was a house fire, and before they even got paged to the house fire, it was like a 4-minute queue that it sat in before they were even dispatched to it. So we don't know exactly how long the queue is that sits at Hennepin County either.
Is that before somebody live answers the phone? Or
Nope, they answer the phone, take the call, but then before they
my house is on
dispatch
fire and now it sits in the queue.
it
before
possibly could sit in a queue for 4 minutes before it's even dispatched.
But that's gonna be into everything, no matter what kind of model you have.
Yep,
It's
Yeah.
a hit.
yep.
So it's,
Why
And
is
that wouldn't be on these guys, it'd be on.
Yeah.
Hennepin County is short-staffed, so a lot of their calls and so busy.
Currently,
Paging systems are not instant either. There can be delays there too.
and part of our problem is dispatch is short 36 dispatchers today. If they could hire 36, they'd take them, and they'd hire them, and that would fill the gap for today. They're also missing some other aspects that we need, like GIS services that can help with mapping and a bunch of other things. We had an instance last summer where we had a missed auto aid departments to help us extinguish a fire. Luckily, we were able to handle that without additional assistance for a good 20 minutes. But some of this comes back to, it starts with that call taker, to your point of, okay, they're getting that, and as long as we're kind of talking about it, this piece of paper in front of you that you have, it's 8.5 by 11 on 2 sides. This is the call CAD, or CAD codes that dispatch has. So they have to take whatever it is, the ones that are highlighted in pink are the top 14 for fire. The rest of them are listed out as different CAD code types for whatever call that might come in. So if I call in and say that, I don't know, my toe hurts, they might categorize it as a pain, and maybe somebody else categorizes it as something else. So we don't have that control over that. Hence, when we look at calls that come into north and to fire from dispatch, we had 935 calls for service last year. Roughly about a third of those went to pre-arrival. So basically that pre-arrival means that they went to North for pre-arrival instructions, meaning, if they needed a Heimlich maneuver or they needed CPR or whatever the case. But the other 2/3, say 600-ish calls, those calls, we don't really know exactly what they were. So, if you send Paul, he might be able to help, he might not be able to. So there's a lot of variables that we within the organization don't have control over. What we're trying to accomplish here basically is provide a level of service to the community that we believe is appropriate, because when somebody calls 911, regardless if it's a stubbed toe or a toothache or whatever it is, that's their worst day. And so we're just trying to provide that level of service to them to help them out. We've had some pretty significant successes in the last couple months. We had a 41-year-old male 5 weeks ago, roughly, that needed CPR, and he's walking and talking today. It's a success story. I got a thank you card upstairs from another resident when they're having a seizure for their child. And so it might not seem important to us potentially, and just taking their vitals and just doing that, I wouldn't say just taking their vitals, because that's extremely important. That's going to give us direction. Are we going this way, or are we going this way with that patient? So if their blood pressure is super high, that's going to indicate something. If it's super low, so those initial vital signs are extremely important when we pass off that information to North. Go ahead, Kevin, with this.
Yeah, I think to kind of go off the seizure, it's one of those things that they're calling in, even though North will eventually get there or PD gets there, right? You have one patient with a seizure. That doesn't mean you have one patient, right? You get on scene, all of a sudden you have the patient who's in seizure, which we can address that. We can assist with that. We can give O2, all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it's the parents or the spouses or the family members that actually need more help than the patient, right? And having that friendly face to show up, make that face-to-face, talk to them, talk them through it. They may have never experienced anything like this before. So just having somebody there to talk with them is huge, and almost does more for them than the actual help to the patient itself, if that makes sense. So, but going up to the duty crew model here, so looking at this with the current 2 full-time firefighter staffing, what we're looking at scheduling wise and shifts to cover. So if we did not hire the 2 full-time, right, and we're going off of just strictly paid on call, we're looking at a total of 104 5-hour duty crew shifts in a total of 4 weeks that we'd be looking to cover. With that 104 shifts between the 26 current firefighters that we have on staff, you're looking closer between training, shifts, all that kind of stuff. We're looking closer to, each firefighter would have 4-hour shifts, or 2 4-hour shifts per month of training. So we're looking at 8 hours per month. And then on top of that, we have 4 all calls, which we anticipate that would be the new requirement.
But they have training anyway, right?
So training
Even without this, they still have, isn't it the same training?
Yep. So that's works
Okay.
in. So what we're looking at without the full-time staffing, so we have 104 shifts divided by 26 firefighters. So you're looking at roughly about 20 hours per month per firefighter. At that time, we're still doing the 2 trainings per month, so 6 trainings a quarter. You're looking at 8 hours right there. Each firefighter will be required to do 4 all calls beyond the duty crew shifts. So you're looking at 4 hours right there. So you're getting close to 32 hours at a minimum just to maintain that with the 26 firefighters. We've got a lot of feedback that even at our current model, trying to maintain right around that 20%, 22%, it's becoming tougher and tougher. So, and that's even if we were to pay the $17 an hour at 32 hours or pay the $30 at 32 hours, the pay might be more substantial, but it's I don't have the time is what we keep getting. And we keep continuously seeing the low staffing that we're getting on these calls, Mayor. That, to Chief's point, you look at some of the other departments like St. Michael, or even, Albertville, whoever, Elk River, they have a lot of tenured members that have that, no different than your dad, they have that mentality of, I drop everything and I go, right? The younger generation that we have currently that are coming in, that are working for us, have the mentality of, well, I have other stuff I need to do, I'll just do my other stuff and whatever happens, happens, right? But that's not serving the customer, and that's not serving the public. They're paying the taxes, we need to serve them. And we need to provide a good customer service, a good experience.
I guess what I was getting at with that comment is it seems like the incentive to want to do that. If you're saying that Dayton is different because we have younger firefighters that don't want to respond.
We have a lot of younger firefighters that have a lot more stuff going on, is the problem, is they have such
And
a
the other
busy life.
communities don't? That's what I'm getting at. The data here is saying
Yep.
that we are well below the
Yep.
other ones.
But we have a lot of other surrounding departments that have those members that are 60, 50 years plus, are all retired, that's all they do is
So
just
you're
respond.
saying
So with having that younger generation, they're scheduled, they have kids, they have sports, life is busier
and
and
Dayton
busier.
is unique in that. That's what I'm waiting to hear from you.
I mean, you look at Osseo, for instance, their average turnout's 5 to 6.
Yeah, but Ossios.
But still, they have 20, very similar,
Yeah.
but a lot of their staff is all 4 years or less, right? So you get that generational differences of priorities is what you're seeing.
I think we're back to, I don't know where we're going on this conversation anymore, but
Need water.
the call system we have was set up, and I guess everybody continues to use it in some, well, I don't know that. But the call system we had was set up when people like Dennis's dad were around, everybody got the page and they went, right?
Yep.
And that's not what happens anymore.
No.
We get 18% on average of the firefighters who show up. So why are we still using that call system if it doesn't work?
And that's really, I mean, we're getting low staffing to the point where, and not just that, we're getting low staffing, we're talking to the firefighters, asking what we can change, and at the end of the day, we keep getting the same answer of, I don't have any more time to give up, right? They're giving all their free time, and they have no more free time.
But that's because this is the other choice you give them. Why? I guess, so this gets into some minutia that maybe we need to get in later when we try to figure out how to fix some of this. But why don't we have at least partly a call system that works like every other company works? You're on call. That just means you will be showing up. Now, I understand that's going to add, again, some turn time, but it's going to be better than what we got today.
I would gladly take that, Mayor, without a doubt, because then I have predictability, but that's a full-time model. Because
Why?
Right?
Not necessarily.
Are you paying them on call time then to answer that phone when they're home?
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
To some extent, I guess I'd be open to that, to give them some of those 5 hours. I'd be open to that, but,
we've
when I
talked, I brought this up to them already in the past since I've been here. Gave them the opportunity to put together, hey, we'll pay you X amount of dollars to stay at home during this time. And they're like, no, I'm not going to stay at home to get paid $25 stipend or whatever to sit there to know that, hey, my buddy's over on the lake fishing or whatever he's doing.
I get that, but not all 26 are looking to go fishing.
No, but the other half of them want to spend time with their kids or whatever. I mean, this is not anything new.
They don't want to be handcuffed to their home.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and as on the fire department, they did have on-call on weekends. It didn't work then.
Well, this is on call, but they're here. How is that better for them?
They don't
No,
have to rely on their
I hear
pager then. So there's a fixed amount of, yeah, they're here, but it's like you have
I
to,
can see why they don't like that.
they don't like what?
This.
Well, it's not
No,
that
they want this.
They want this. The problem is
Oh, sorry, you
This
wish.
is a full
I
time.
changed the slide.
You went
Sorry
back
about
to
that.
it, yeah.
Sorry, I
they-
went to go water.
they don't have,
The previous slide, I
Yeah.
can see why they don't want that.
Yes.
right, because they don't want to put any more time in, that's where their 20 hours a month is their max in theory, between calls, training, maintenance and whatnot. That's roughly about what we're seeing from the organization, is that they want to participate about 20 hours.
Why are, sorry.
No, that's fine. So some of them don't have that for which I respect. So there isn't, kind of back to what you had said, Mayor, is like, there isn't really, I've tried a couple times different things to come up with of how can we encourage them to participate, But at the end of the day, one firefighter's like, no, even in this process, he's like, I'm not gonna participate in the duty crew model. He's been honest with us. And that usually happens because I don't have the time. Some of them are, part of it is sometimes they can come in and sign their name and go home. Sometimes that's not the case, often.
So you guys, the argument you're making is the demographics of our fire department is just significantly different than all these other ones.
It's not significantly different, it's just that ours right now, well, it is significantly different from the capacity of the age and the participation, or the age of the organization as far as experience and tenure is probably far different than if I had to take a poll of the other organizations to look at. They probably have some 20-year members, 25-year members, and that might go down from there.
And a lot of, like, you look at Rogers, and they started out with their public works being able to respond during the day. They have gone away from that because of liability and pay issues and all that.
That makes sense.
So they have generations of family that have stuck in the Rogers area, so they have a lot more of that, the camaraderie that father, son, grandson are all joining the fire departments, where all of our older gentlemen that were on the fire department, all their kids have moved out of the city, and are on fire departments in other cities instead of our city. But a lot of it is that we notice it with generations in the cops too. We can't get some of them to work overtime. They won't work overtime. Unless you mandate it, they won't work it.
Makes sense. I mean, I understand that part. Do you two guys count as the 26 firefighters?
No, we do.
You don't?
No.
Okay, so my question would be, and I don't understand this part of it, and I come from the way back when if you wanted to pay the bills, you had to go to work. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
Either that or starve.
Fair statement.
Yeah.
I mean, that's reality. Why is it that we can't say, John, you got 6 hours on Tuesday, whatever day it is, that's your shift? Because right now, we have there's 168 hours in a week. And if you divide the 28 firefighters that we have, that's 6 hours, a 6-hour shift. And you just tell them, Pete, John, you're here you're on call that day. You don't have to be here, but you're on call. You're at your house that day.
That's exactly what we're presenting.
No, they gotta be
No,
here.
At their house is what you're saying.
But
Yeah.
there's
Or whatever.
There's reason to having them in the station, though. There's a big benefit to that as well. Not just, they're not just going to show up and just sit here in the station and twirl their thumbs, right? They're going to have planned agendas. They're going to have trainings to do. Every night when they come in, they're going to have public relations, whether it be training, facility maintenance, inspections, pre-plans. There's a giant list of stuff that they can be working on in order for us to build out our city and make it more a better, safer community, right? For even instance, for tomorrow night for the open house, I sent out emails to the department saying, hey, I'm looking for 2 helpers for tomorrow night, and I haven't got a single person to volunteer. In this model, we have 2 people here, staff sitting here. I can say, okay, tonight, you guys, while you're on shift, you're going over to do PR tonight at the open house.
We get a lot of those unfulfilled requests. I mean, Elizabeth has asked for things and we try to accommodate. People are not interested. Well, National Night Out will be coming up soon. They're really interested in, what I've often said is that it's not about the Benjamins they're putting in their wallets, to your point, Scott.
Yeah.
It's really about their time. Their time is their form of currency, if you will.
Yeah, but if you don't want to make calls, you're not a firefighter.
Then you did.
I don't disagree with you. And that's the thing of, I think there's an often I'm no different than like what you guys have said,
Right.
My pager would go off, I would go to the calls. I would respond to whatever it was and I would go. And the struggle that I have is it's like, okay, we've trained you, or you've put in the time to train with the organization, and you put in 360 hours for EMT, firefighter 1, 2, and hazmat, and then we get, on a rare occasion, we'll get a stretcher fill. We're getting, maybe we get a mutual aid call, maybe we get 1 or 2 structure fires throughout the year, And for those significant calls, even if you're trained from the EMT or even if you're EMR, unfortunately, we had a 7-year-old that passed away. I had one firefighter respond to that call, and one full-time firefighter, and it wasn't me, it was him.
And my cops were busy doing security on the family, so we couldn't do much patient care.
So, but to your point is, we've seen a switch in the culture of, I want to be part of the organization, but I want to be a part of it when I have the time.
Yeah,
And
but unfortunately to me, then all you want to be is a glorified guy. Hey, I'm a firefighter, but you don't want to do any work.
It does seem odd they'll go through all these hours of training and then they don't want to do anything.
But that, I don't disagree, that's kind of where we're at, because
Are you sure you don't have another problem in the department, or they just don't want to show up?
You know, we've had multiple conversations to see what we can do to
Biggest thing is
offer or
time.
change, and it all comes down to time. It comes down to time, and it comes down to family and sports and kids.
I get all
You
that.
look at the average age of our firefighters, I think there's only maybe 4 that don't have children, and all of them that do have children all have children in the ages of that 0 to, I would say, 5, 6 range, right? Where they're right at that peak of sports starting. We got hockey, we got baseball, you know, and you have both parents working, right? So it comes down to what do I have available to respond, and it gets smaller and smaller.
I have a question. So,
So around this call thing, because I'm never going to get past this, I don't think, that how many people do you think you would lose if you went to a scheduled paid on-call system? You pay people $5 an hour or $10 an hour, whatever the going rate is these days, to carry the pager
sorry.
for that week, that 4-day period, whatever your 26 guys divided by the number of shifts you got to fill. But they're on a schedule. You're on call, right? When I was in a role that I had to do this, my week of on-call, I was on call 125 and a half hours. So every hour that I wasn't physically on site, I was on call that week. I planned my life around it, right? Now, we didn't require that you be at home, but the response time to the hospital was the piece you had to commit to. So you needed to be within that distance. How many people would you lose if you went to a system like that?
it's hard to say, because that's really what this system is. Except we're scheduling them to be at the station from a response time perspective.
Which means they are not with their family.
What's that?
I said that means they're not with their family. They're exactly.
But they're not with their family for a dedicated period of time.
Yep.
The rest of the time, they are with their family.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just 6 hours out of the week that they're 5 or 6 hours out of the week they're dedicated to the fire department.
We're talking 10 hours a month is what we're asking for.
Yeah.
Not 6 hours a week.
I have a question. Why are both chiefs on at the same time?
Yeah,
Every
I've
day?
seen that too. I thought that was
And my second follow-up question is if everyone else is required to take some sort of weekend shift, if you're asking that of your people, why do we not see even one weekend from the chiefs? Or one weekend day?
I come whenever I'm available at home, so I'm on call 365 days a year.
So my question is then, could we not stagger your shifts and have 1 week you start at 7 or 7:30, whatever this is, my eyes are blurry, and then the next week you start at noon? Why could we not, because we have 2 full-time now we're paying, and then supplement in between with the paid on call?
Yeah, it does seem like you'd want to stagger the expertise.
Right, especially because we're such a young department, we would want to have that ability to train and have that hands-on, one-on-one.
And that's where Kevin and I are already here on Thursday nights, in that
But-
capacity of coming in and supporting those other events.
Right, but so are they, I guess. You never ask of your people what you wouldn't also do. I guess it's just how I've always viewed it. So I'm wondering if there isn't a world where those shifts could be staggered in some capacity. And maybe it is just more into the evening calls to cover where that 70% of the calls happen, so that there's a chief here that we pay full time, and then you supplement with your paid on call My other question is we used to do response teams at night.
They won't do them.
Who's they?
The department, we just had this conversation with them. So the department wants to run, they brought up with medical teams, and we offered, they asked if they could do medical teams. I said, sure, we can do medical teams, but we're gonna do medical teams 7 days a week.
Right.
And they said, well, we're not gonna do weekends. I'm like, well, what's the difference between the person that's calling 911 on Saturday or Sunday versus Monday through Friday? And they said, well, then we don't wanna do them. Okay.
And that's the old model that they used to have when I was in the fire department. You were on call.
Yeah,
for-
but-
But only
when-
one station did it.
When Travis started, we all did it.
Station 2 did it, Station 1 did not.
Yeah, Station 1 never.
Was it always Station 2?
Yeah.
It worked well. I enjoyed it. It was predictable. I knew if he was getting
But
up in the
again,
middle of
that
the
goes
night.
back to that predictability of you know when you work, kind of just
Correct.
like this duty crew model. You know when you work. If you're scheduled from 6 to 10, and then you come
You
back.
knew when you were on call.
I knew when you were on call, but I was still sleeping
It-
next to my husband.
It didn't work. We had issues with the on-call, or the being on call for the 7 days a week. Even people that were on call would not show up for calls, so you still ran into issues with the.
I don't remember us having a ton of issues, and we did it for multiple years when Travis first got on.
I did it for 8.
I hear
I
you,
know.
Paul. I'm just saying that we did it, and I thought it worked well. It was-
Maybe you as a family didn't have issues, but the department was struggling with the on-call model, at least when I was on.
Well, you were gone before me.
We were still struggling.
I don't,
This
this doesn't make sense to me, and I feel like there's 100 other ways we could skin this cat. I don't like the two chiefs on at the same time.
And unfortunately, I started out as a working chief when I first started as chief in 2014, and my administrative duties, and then I hired a lieutenant and his administrative duties. It's Monday through Friday for us.
It's no different for
We're
us.
meetings, we're constantly running places. A lot of community engagement stuff is what we deal with during the week. And I used to put in, trying to be at everything, I used to put in 70, 80 hours a week doing stuff. And it burnt me and my family out at least. So that's,
I think even compared to, I know Fridley, for instance, runs a duty crew. Amy is a spouse. Her husband, Mark Luck, is on Fridley running the duty crew, from a spouse standpoint.
Yeah, I'm happy to, if it's okay, I should
Spiel.
share. Yeah, so when, you all know, Caitlin has special needs, so it's really important for Mark and I to have that balance at home. But when he was on Fridley, I loved it so much that I actually asked my husband to leave Dayton and focus on Fridley. Because I had a predictable model, and I could work, I had my work-life balance, Caitlin's needs were met. He was able to keep up on his skills, working with the lineup, he knew what had to be done. I think, I'll share two things as a spouse. I liked the fact that Mark had to do 15 hours a month. He ended up always, Mark, he was there, people would call in sick, they put the shifts up for a bid, and it was a 3-month calendar, right? So, we would sit down as a family and we would say, okay, what do we have going on for work? What do we have going on with kiddos? And then I would tell Mark, yep, you can do this day, this day, this day, I'm free, we can work around this day, and we had a 3-month calendar that we knew. And it didn't mean you were locked in, if something happened, I'd say, hey, bud, you want to take my shift? And you switch off your shifts. But it allowed Chief Spencer, God rest his soul, he's passed now, but it allowed Chief to have a predictable model for the city of Fridley. And then now, Madison's old other chiefs at Maple Grove, but it allowed him at Fridley to work with the lineup, work with the PD. They're also public safety, so it's a little different. But I think as a spouse, I can say that when we're talking with police and with fire, there's such a difference in how we have to look at the overall public safety and what EMS brings as a whole too, because you all rely on each other. And how can you do that balance? And you guys are in a community that, yes, sharing all the data. I love seeing this open dialogue, and you're here bringing data to make these types of decisions. But your community is growing, and there are different needs. We are starting to see more multicultural 911 calls coming out of Dayton now, and so there's that piece. But when Mark was at Fridley and he had his predictable schedule, they would do the truck checks. They would work on different things. They would work with Alina and specifically to work on those skills, have those one-on-ones. And they were doing the inspections. They were going out doing, visiting the group homes, doing all different things in the community that if they're at home waiting for just the call to come, we're being more reactive. And if you want to look at building a community risk reduction plan for the city of Dayton as a whole, we have to look at where we're going to be utilizing, like Stephanie says, where can we utilize the best resources at the right time? And having public safety come together with you guys and looking at where is the balance here? Yeah, maybe 2.4 calls on average a day, but if we've got 2 people dedicated at the fire station, then, and if North is going to be, the demand and staffing too on the EMS side is ridiculous. But I think look at how they're being paged, lights on, lights off, hurry up and come, wait, and that unpredictable model. And then there is really a value, coming from a clinical perspective, there is a value to have your firefighters as an EMT versus an EMR, because this is the biggest support for EMS. And yes, it may be vitals, yes, it may be different things, and there are variances, but during that duty crew model, pull that tangy, hold your medical, medical director accountable and say, hey, at certain times, I want to have North come out here because I have these guys here, and they have this. But there's ways to do it, and that's how it was in Fridley. They went and they sat down with Alina, and they said, here it is. We have this small budget, public safety, police and fire, but this is what worked for ours, and they filled it. And as they did it, the data grew, and you were able to extrapolate different data and see, does this work? But without having some type of a predictable model for the department, it's really challenging, and for all of us. You've worked with other ones, but I can tell you as a family member with Fridley, it worked very well. And we didn't have a predictable model in Dayton. Mark's back here now and, working on different things, but yeah, it's one of those things where I can tell you, we're in Station 1, we live in Otsego. There's many times, Mark's the only one that shows up. And then he sits there. And it's frustrating as a wife, because I'm like, hey, well, we can't watch TV on a Saturday, we can't have date night, we can't do stuff with Caitlin because it's unpredictable. And then he comes back and he's like, well, I made my call, but I'm the only one on the show. Well, that's kind of a bummer, right? So I just think we're in a weird space where we have to look at it always.
I don't think there's any doubt that scheduling a call makes sense.
Yeah.
My issue is, well, a couple issues. For one, I think our call volume needs to be examined. For two, whether or not they need to be here for all 5 hours, or maybe all this, the details we can hammer out later, but maybe in the night calls they only need to be there. I don't know, but really, this issue wraps around not just this, but the full-time also.
Right.
And I don't know, you have a lot of experience with fire departments.
Yep.
Does it make sense that we should be at full-time at this point in time?
Your call volume itself, and I don't want to put anybody in the box, but I do think that you could see both sides. You could see, if you put 2 full-time firefighters, they could do, fill the gap so the crews aren't expected to spend so much time, right, pulling the duty crews. If you are looking at reducing your call volume by per type, it's gonna fall back on EMS, it's gonna fall back on the response. Right now at 2.4, working with other fire departments, they would utilize those 2 full-time to be like how the other cities have it. Like this person would also be there wearing a little bit of multiple hats, kind of doing a couple of different things. In that place I see, having that multi-use person doing the duty crews. But, you know, it's one of those things where, yes, just looking at the numbers, the argument could be, well, at 2.4 calls on average a day, do we really need to have 2 full-time people? But if you look at it as what those full-time people are going to be doing at the station and how they're going to be helping EMS, how they're going to be helping PD, really looking at how can EMS, PD, fire, do we need to be coming to some of these calls? Maybe we need to be like, you know, Anoka and Champlin. But there's danger in that too, because there's also, and Alina can tell you, is when you say, I'm gonna take it as info and leave it on the medics, that response is ultimately dialed down to that patient having to wait. And we see that a lot with Alina, you know. But it is tough, you know, I see both sides, and I just think that based on the data, based on how Gary laid it out, you know, that's why I'm here today, is to say you could utilize the 2 full-time people if they're utilized in multiple ways to take the onus off of the firefighters that are already struggling to come to calls already. You know, there needs to be something that has to be built out to work from, and if you're focusing just on the on-call firefighters, it's gonna be really hard to have that infrastructure. You know, you're gonna have to invest in how you wanna deal with your public safety as a whole. Whether it's on the police, whether it's on fire, however, but ultimately, here in the city of Dayton, you know, the call volume and the response time is gonna be, you know, more and more. We have group homes that we're dealing with. We have, you know, other things coming into the city that everybody needs to be trained differently on. And there's no pre-planning in your town right now, honestly, you know. So that's what those folks would be focused on during the day and working on their skill.
The other part of it too, just a couple things to kind of close out as we're getting close to the end, is that from a Relief Association perspective, $3,250 a year service is not enough money to maintain that, because based right now, after 10 years, they're vested at 60%. We're not seeing firefighters stay for 10 years, and that's just not here in Dayton, that's across fire service. So trying to come up with something there. A lot of communities that are built out or that are larger, I'll just use a couple examples. I don't know, do you know what Rogers or Anoka Champion's at for per year service, or how they're set up?
Right now, they're partially vested, I think, at 10, fully vested at 20.
Do you know what their dollar amount is?
Theirs, I want to say, because they're a defined contribution, not a defined benefit.
Different setup.
Yeah, it's much more lucrative pension than us. I mean, after 20 years, they're walking away with anywhere from 200 to 400,000 versus 60,000.
And part of that is based upon, or a lot of it's based upon our commercial build out, and just as we continue to grow, those dollars will grow. We look at, based on how we have set that up right now, we're trying to utilize dollars that have already been allocated to the city, as well as using the dollars that would be given back to the city for the Relief Association. So that would offset roughly a percentage of the full-time's contribution to police and fire para, as well as some of the other firefighters that be moving into that as well. So we're utilizing those dollars. Without the full-time staff, we will remain status quo. We'll remain at $17 an hour, and we'll continue the model that we're moving forward with that we have today. I'm not sure what the response from the organization will be, because this is something that we've been working with them on to come up with more of work-life fit, work-life balance, whatever, based on their time. And this has been a collaboration. This isn't just Kevin and Gary coming up with what this looks like. And the duty crew model is a model that's been out there for 25 years. Roseville and and the city of Plymouth started this, and it's grown from there over time. So basically, like I said, we're in that time of growing pains within the community, and we need to start to look at, what's that, how are we going to continue to serve the community? And the reality is, Minnesota is very unique in the capacity of having roughly 780-ish fire departments. You're seeing a lot of failures of fire departments in rural Minnesota because there isn't enough staff there, very similar to what we have here. And if you look at some of the departments across the country, you will see that they started approaching the call numbers that we're saying that roughly 2 calls or more per day roughly starts to impact, as it is here, your response by your paid on-call staff, your volunteer staff, whatever you want to call it. So,
What do we spend on paid on-call right now, annually? Do we know? Does anybody know?
Last year's cost was like 167,000.
106?
Roughly, you could say 170. That was based on last year's call volume, so.
106, 107?
167,000.
167.
So about $170,000 roughly. That was based on last year's call volume. This year's call volume has gone up, so it would be more than that this year. I don't know what that exact number is.
Okay.
What is the requirement for para? So you have to have a scheduled shift. What's the number of hours?
there is no requirement.
So you just have to have a scheduled
They
shift?
have to be equal. The only thing that has to be equal availability. Like, you can't just say, okay, you get 15 shifts, you get 2. They have to be equally
Yeah,
available.
everyone has to have the same
Yes.
number. That's
Yes.
it? There's
Or
no minimum?
availability. Doesn't mean it has to be actual number. Like,
Yeah.
one person might really want to work and they can work
It's got a
15
pay for
shifts.
performance system.
Yeah, but like they have to be available. Like, okay, everyone's scheduled out 3 shifts this month, but one person might not want to work any of their 3 shifts, so they can give all 3 of theirs away. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But
But there is no minimum, like you have to be scheduled
Nope.
X amount of hours.
And it pays per hours worked then?
yeah, so it's based on your annual salary for the first 5 years, then it's called your top 5, and then whatever those top 5 are, then they go based off that once you number of years of service. And then number of years of service based on your top 5 salary for each year is then the benefit that you get each
Yeah, I
year.
guess I meant on the front end, we're making a contribution for hours worked.
Yes, so it's a percentage, 11.7%, and then we contribute 17.7, and then the
Firefighters kick in.
firefighters contribute to 11.7 of their salary percentage. So it's almost, 28
Almost.
and a half,
Yeah. Yeah.
roughly.
So yeah, it's trying to really, up that fundamentally to pay them to, show up to a certain extent is that's that incentive. The longest time with the incentive was the Relief Association. The other thing that it offers the city is it removes that liability from the city. So currently, as you're aware, that sometimes we have to kick in for that if their performance is not where it needs to be. I think it's 80% or greater.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, if there's no objections, we will adjourn now.